Hello, welcome everybody. This is our first podcast from BAMEOTUK UK, a Let's Talk series. This is episode 1, Let's Talk with Black Female Occupational Therapists in the UK. This episode is taking place in Black History Month, October 2020. So I think we should give a little background information about Black History Month. Black History Month event grew out of Negro History Week in 1926, the brainchild of well-known historian Carter G. Woodson, together with other prominent African Americans. It began as a way of remembering important people in events in history of the African diaspora. President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout history. Since 1976, every US president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Black History Month is celebrated in October in the United Kingdom. It was first celebrated in the UK in October 1987. It was organised through the leadership of Ghanaian analyst Akiyaba Ade Sebo, who was a coordinator of special projects for the Greater London Council, and through collaboration was able to get the project underway. But as we know, Black history can be celebrated every day, not just in October. So here we are. Thank you very much, panel, for giving up your evening to do our first BAME-OT UK podcast. And we are blessed to have you all here with us today. So before we start our discussions, I'm going to go around the panel and ask you to say your name and your ethnicity, if that's all right. So I'm just going to go by who's with me at the top and then go round the panels. So first of all, I've got Odette.
Hello, everyone. My name is Odette Richardson, and I was born in Jamaica.
And then the next person is Kalima.
Yes, I'm Kalima. So I would say I'm Black British from Caribbean heritage.
And the next person I've got is Kosovo.
Hello, my name's Kosovo. I'm Black British with heritage from both Nigeria and Togo.
And Sikla.
Hi everyone, so I'm Sikla. I've got heritage from Zimbabwe.
Thank you, you're all welcome. And my name is Mushrat Ahmed Landiyu. I like to be called Mish, and I am British, Asian, Bangladeshi. So I'm going to ask my first question. I'm so excited. Okay, so my first question, and again, I'll go around the panels that are in front of me, of your faces. How did you find out about occupational therapy? Can I ask Sikla that first, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. So I found out about occupational therapy from my sister's friend. She's also a Black female. She's Nigerian. So I was struggling, trying to decide what I'm going to do at university. And I remember she happened to be at our house, and then she was like, "Oh, I'm an OT." and I was like, "Oh, what's that? I've never heard of that before." And then she kind of just explained it to me. And then after that, we kind of researched it. And every time I would call her up and she'll tell me a little bit more about it. And then I remember, just to get a bit more of an idea of it, after talking to her, I organized to shadow some OTs in some hospitals near me. And then I loved it. And then from then on, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to study at university. So mine went just, this is how I kind of found out about occupational therapy. But even though I'd seen it, I don't really think I knew it as I don't think most people do until you actually go to university and then you learn it. And then, of course, you start practicing. So, that one's quite simple.
No, that's really interesting. So it's someone that you knew told you about it, and that's kind of sparked your interest.
Yeah.
That's great. Kalima, could you answer that question too?
Yeah, so actually mine was my sister, actually. I was researching again what I wanted to do because I'd finished university from a previous degree a few years before and I wanted to do something different. So I was actually looking at physio and midwifery. And then my sister said, what about occupational therapy? So, oh, what's that? So again, doing some research online. And around about that time, my grandmother was being discharged from hospital. And she also had an OT that was working for her discharge planning as well, you know, set up a microenvironment downstairs and things like that. So I had a little bit of knowledge seeing that, and also just research. But yeah, initially it was my sister that told me about the profession.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So another one who knew somebody who was
Yeah.
already in the profession. Kosovo.
Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't know anyone who was already in the profession. So I was in sixth form trying to decide what I wanted to do when I went to university. I had a real interest in drama therapy. I'd studied drama at GCSE and A-level when I thought, right, that's definitely what I want to do. But then found out that to get into drama therapy, you need to do something before it because it's a postgraduate degree. So then I was a bit stuck and I was thinking, oh God, right, what am I going to do to get into drama therapy? Which is when I came across occupational therapy. And again, my mum was a nurse, so I knew a bit about, but I was like, I don't want to be a nurse. I want to do something different. So contacted some occupational therapists, went and spoke to them in different areas. And then, yeah, you know, applied for the degree and I've ended up falling in love with OT. So that's what I do now.
Oh, no, that's brilliant. So you had someone who worked in the health service, but you didn't really want to do that. Oh,
yeah.
That's really interesting that there's some connection to the health service already.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's really interesting. And Odette, what about
Okay,
yourself?
so I first came across occupational therapists when I was working as a healthcare assistant at Northwick Park Hospital. I was working in theatres at the time, and I was sent to collect a patient from the rehabilitation ward. And I went up onto the ward, my first time on the ward, and the OT was doing a session with the patient. And I was really fascinated. And I thought, I could do this. I'm quite liking it. And my boss at the time wanted me to train to become a nurse. And I thought, no, I think I'm going to do OT. So that was my first exposure, but I was really, really fascinated. And I was hooked since then.
Can I ask each of you also, how long have you been a qualified practitioner? Can I start with Odette?
Just over 20 years.
Just over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Kalima?
Around 7.5 years.
Not a small number either. Kosovo?
I'm still a baby, just over 4 years.
Oh. And Sikla?
Yeah, same as Kalima, around about 4 years as well.
Oh, yeah. So that's really good. I just remember, I think I was probably around 8 years into clinical when I left and went into education. So I've been in occupational therapy education for about 18 years and I haven't looked back. Yeah, definitely keeps my interest going. So the next question is, what specialism do you work in as an occupational therapist, and what does your work involve? So can I go to Kosovo?
So I currently work in an integrated care team. I previously worked in acute mental health and started within my role in the ICT in January 2019. So I've been there just over a year and a half. So my role, it's integrated. So I work with physios, nurses, healthcare assistants. I work both in the community and in a 9-bedded rehab unit, which is actually based within a nursing home. So we've got some beds that are funded by the NHS via a local CCG. So I tend to go out and see people in their own homes. Tends to be people that have been discharged from hospital or are struggling, deterioration in mobility or general functioning. They're struggling to do the things that they're able to do before. So I see quite a range of patients. Some of them can be fairly fit, they've had a fall and trying to get back up on their feet, all the way to end of life and palliative care as well. So supporting people in their final moments, getting the right intervention in place, equipment, etc. And then in the rehab, it's generally patients that have come from hospital, again, falls, fractures, people that have been off legs, just struggling, and then we spend time with them trying to rehabilitate them and then sending them back home into the community.
So there's like a theme there about sort of getting people back to home or back to the residential home, so that they can go back to somewhere familiar again.
This is it, back to their norm, and giving them, you know, the tools that they've potentially lost or didn't have before to support them with what they need to do. And that's what I love about OT as well. It's about enabling someone to do what they want to do and what's important to them. So
that's very that's what I find fascinating about us. We use that life experience and activities to enable people to get back to what they want to do, need to do, have to do.
Exactly.
And we're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Yeah, I know, all over.
Odette, what about yourself?
Okay, so I have had a varied career. I started my occupational therapy career as a basic grade OT, and I did a rotational post because I thought that was a great post to get my foundation skills. So I did a bit of mental health, some neuro rehab, and some hospital-based acute OT. I knew quite early on when I trained that I wanted to work in social services. So I spent quite a few years working as a social services OT, and then I became a duty team manager. And then after that, I decided I wanted a change. So I moved up north and I applied for a job within an acute hospital setting. And so today, I am working as a head of service for occupational therapy and professional lead for our community teams. So my normal role currently is to provide professional leadership for the team, also to sort of represent the trust, a strategic event in terms of ensuring that staff also have the requirements that they are adhering to, so that professional standards are set and maintained and monitored. And that includes looking after staff on honorary contracts as well. So my role also entails operational management, which means ensuring that we've got enough staff to cover the wards and moving people around on a daily basis, reacting to things like COVID, ensuring discharges are effective, and so on. So it's a varied role. No 2 days are the same. I do spend a lot of time with our local universities as part of the sort of supporting with their student recruitment and also student evaluation. We do take a lot of students. I provide role model supervision for the students on role emerging placements. So I provide some long arm supervision, and I chair the BAME staff network within my local hospital as well. So quite a varied role.
Yeah, so that kind of gives the kind of potential scope as you change from being completely clinical to going up the seniority, and you can have like a variety of roles. And you've got that management side, doing the operational things as well, but you also attached yourself to the university as well, so that you can work with the future generations of occupational therapists.
Yeah.
So you've got a kind of wide scope in your responsibilities going on there. So yeah, so
I still do miss the patient contact though, because that's my favorite bit of the job. So when we're really short staffed, I get my uniform on, I go into the wards and I do some, I call it real OT, and I love that.
Yeah, but then we've got you as a role model to show us where we can be as we move up in seniority. So in a way, that's a blessing that we can see you and hear you today in a different position other than clinical. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that. Kalima.
Okay, so I've worked in a varied jobs as well. I've done mental health, dementia, jobs that Kothel was talking about, intermediate care, bed-based rehab, community rehab, neuro. At the moment, I'm in prisons, social care. So we're looking at prisoners who may be disabled or have learning disabilities and things like that, what support we can provide within the prison. Sometimes get involved with release planning, or like when they're being transferred and things like that, to make sure that their needs were met. The same as how they would be in the community, and also doing some moving and handling as well, equipment provision and things like that within the prisons, which is completely different to a previous NHS role.
Oh, that's fascinating. Prison always, I think, if I can inquire a bit more, if that's all right. Colleen.
That's fine, go ahead.
So I was just thinking, so you're in the justice system, and how do we use our activity-based skills and knowledge to enable them to exit out of prison into somewhere that they feel they've got the skills to carry on and not do something to get them back into prison? Where is that point where we can work with them in prison and then continue with them, if you like, outside? Because it's a kind of a long-term thing, isn't it? That social justice.
Yeah, well, social care is different within the prison. So you're looking at what you do in the community. You're looking at equipment. You're looking at, can they wash and dress themselves? Can they feed themselves? Can they collect their meals? Could they shower, toileting? So you're looking at the basic things for them within the prison. You're looking at the environment. Can they get up and down stairs? Can they get on and off the bed, on and off the toilet? Providing bits of equipment, maybe rails and things like that inside the cells as well. So we don't actually get involved with the rehab that you're talking about. Usually that's separate contracts. There's no OTs. That's private firms, or bid for those contracts to do that work within the prison. You also do have a forensic mental health section where there is an OT that works in that section, and she does some things with the clients there, with some of the prisoners. So yeah, we're completely different. It's actually it's a new role. It's only been around, I think, since the Care Act in 2015, since the amendment for prisons. So it's actually quite new. So even within the prison, some people don't really know who you are. So we're not mental health, we're social care within the prison. So, and we do provide equipment, moving and handling, there might be similar end of life prisoners there, long-term conditions, things like that. So you would get involved with them there. And then if they're not going to be released and they're going to maybe pass away in prison, you would then provide all the equipment and things that they need in the prison, alongside the healthcare as well. And then, or you might get them transferred if they're able to, but that doesn't really have anything to do with us. That's the criminal justice system itself. We just basically provide what we need to at that particular point. We don't get involved with the legal aspect. That's the criminal justice system. So you've got to know your place.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, that was me, my misunderstanding when I heard you. I didn't fully get the totality of your role just then, so it's good you explained that to me. So yeah, so I can see now where you're coming in and how you're working with them, and it's really different from what I had in my mind that you were doing, assuming that, and that's what I wanted to hear, but actually you've got quite a different remit within that. So thank you for clarifying that, because that's interesting to hear, that it's still that social care need going into the prison service that we would see out there in the community, going into people's homes as well.
So you have a care agency also, that the local authority commission. So if they can't wash and dress themselves, for example, or feed themselves, you'll have a carer that will have to assist them with those things as well. So usually when you see OT in prison, you think of the forensic side of things, the mental health side, but we're purely the social care side for more kind of health needs, as opposed to, we would work with people with mental health needs as well. If they're having difficulties with these ADLs, with the activities of daily living, personal activities, we would support them with that. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. See, Claire?
Yeah. So I think since even when I was at uni, I kind of knew I wanted mental health. I've always loved and had an interest in mental health, how the mind works, how that affects people and their function. So I straight away that's where I went. So I work in working age inpatient mental health services. I'm kind of in a part management, part clinical role. So that includes kind of overseeing, I think, 7 wards that we have for working age patients, kind of focusing on recovery, and, you know, seeing what skills people have. Can we do a little bit of rehabilitation while they're on the ward, or who can we link them up with? So we kind of start working with community OTs and kind of outside services as well, just to allow that transition from inpatient to getting them back into the community, because that's what we basically focus on as part of recovery and the process that we follow. So yeah, that kind of involves assessing patients when they come in, looking at their function, seeing if home is the best place for them, or is maybe a supported type of accommodation better for them, and then supporting those services that they're going to go into to be able to help them to meet their needs. So I think that's kind of what we do at the moment. And of course, intake students as well. We've got so many students right now, probably like 6 or 7 at the moment, as we always do. So yeah, it's just kind of supporting the journey and that patient journey.
Wow, there's like sort of themes coming through to me through what you're saying. Even a death, even though you're not completely clinical, there is that thing about understanding the people that you're serving and then trying to provide what's going to be best for them, whether you're in management or directly in clinical with the patients and service users. And that's kind of core occupational therapy, isn't it? Like being person-centered, the individualization of understanding what's required, and links onto your Care Act as well, which was really pushing that from the community. Yeah, that was interesting. Kind of making me feel like going into care. You know,
Come back.
That was the thing I sometimes miss is doing that, because we'll go on to the next question, but you know, I do feel like somehow I was pushed out a little bit from where I was, so that's why I went to education, but we'll have that discussion in a moment. So I'm going on to the next question. Have there been any challenges in your career due to your ethnicity? If yes, how did you move forward from the challenge or challenges? Can I go to Kalima for that one? Start there.
Yeah, I've had challenges. I would say in one particular role, one of my NHS roles, I did have, I would say, direct racial discrimination. In the end, I did raise a grievance, and this was against the manager. And during the investigation, I think that people didn't really want to speak up, so no one really wanted to speak up. So in the end, you know, it was no case to answer really, because there wasn't those witnesses who initially said that they would you know, they would come forward. So in the end, after all of that, I mean, it was a couple of years, in the end I ended up leaving really. I just wasn't going to put myself or my health through those issues. In other roles, yes, more microaggressions you might find, and to be honest, what I do is ignore it. There's nothing else that I can do, so I just have to get on with my job and just ignore things really. That's how I get on with it.
Ignoring, yeah, but that can take its toll after a while. Definitely. Oh, thanks. That was really, in a way, I would say, open of you to share that, because that's a big thing, to just experience such direct racism from a person in a place of power. It makes you powerless in one sense, you know, and because there's a network of managers that will stick together, and, you know, and you as that one person has to deal with it. But you're here and you're all together, and I hope we support you in BAMEOTUK Network, but I'm sure you have your support systems as well. Sikla, what about you in relation to that question?
I think at the moment I'm quite lucky in terms of management and kind of like the team that I work in. It's, I would say, quite diverse. I think we have quite a lot of BAME OTs at the moment, and even OT students and management, whether that's within occupational therapy or it's within the nursing side. So I think I'm quite lucky there now. But I think when I initially started, you know, I was straight out of university, you know, you're quite naive. I think there was something happening with management there, and I couldn't understand it at first. I remember we had two Black female OTs that used to work there, and there was an introduction, and then I came in, becoming the third one initially, and I hadn't realized it then until it was explained to me. But in a sense, the manager at that time was trying to kind of split us up so that it's not 3 Black people in one space. Yeah, I know. And I couldn't understand it initially, because I was thinking, why would that matter? I mean, she didn't verbally say it, but that's what my colleagues felt. And it's quite sad really, because both of them ended up leaving that job. And when I look back at it, I can see it now. But at the time I was kind of like, I was in this place where I was kind of confused. My first job, you know, I'm fresh out of university. I'm like, what's happening? But like I said, at the moment now, it's pretty good. Pretty good and diverse, and you can have those conversations if anything comes up. Yeah.
That's so fresh to hear, and so good to hear that can go on and that can happen, that you can be in a much more diverse setting. And because of that diversity, it's so healthy for the team that you can be open and you can have those discussions.
Exactly.
So that's really good to hear, Sikla. What about Kosovo?
So I also feel like I've been quite lucky, but I feel like it's a shame to feel like I'm lucky because I've not experienced. It's just, we shouldn't have to be saying that, should we? But I mean, I've worked in 2 different roles since I qualified in 2016, acute mental health and in an integrated care team. And in both roles, I have to admit, I've had really supportive teams. I've never noticed anyone discriminating against me, not in terms of staff anyway, because of my race or my colour. In my first job, I had one colleague who was BAME background, one of our OT techs, and the rest weren't, but we got on amazingly. I'm catching up with them tomorrow. You know, we're still great friends. And I had one BAME student in that role as well. But as I said, no issues. And in this job, I've got one BAME colleague who's a physio. The rest are non-BAME, but I'm really lucky to say that I've not experienced any prejudice towards me that I'm aware of, not from staff members. It can be a bit different from patients. I live and work in Hampshire, which is predominantly white. So yeah, but I have been lucky, I have to admit.
That is fantastic, and it's good to hear. It's good to hear these examples of positiveness, to know that there is some light, you know, happening, and that it does happen, that it is good, but it is rare.
It is, and that's what I've learned, and I think that's the sad and scary thing. Having these discussions, I've learned that I really am the anomaly, and there's so many other people that have had awful experience, and that's what I mean. I shouldn't have to say I'm lucky, but I am. I'm lucky that I haven't experienced it like other people have.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. Odette, what about yourself?
Okay, so mine's a story of 2 halves, really. So before I moved to Newcastle, I was working in Brent, London Borough of Brent. And Brent, as you all know, is one of the most multicultural boroughs in London. And our team consisted of mixed. So there was half white and half blacks. And it was fine. There was no problems. We all got on like a house on fire, and we enjoyed working with each other. And it was a great team. Really missed it when I moved up to Newcastle, because that was a very different kettle of fish. So walking down the hospital corridors in Newcastle over 10 years ago, just over 10 years, there's nobody that looks like me. I was a strange phenomenon. And so I think people didn't know how to take me. So it was interesting. Going up as a manager of a service, there was a group of OTs who decided that they would not be managed by a Black OT, which is fair enough. But so lots of challenges initially. For those first 2 years, it was really, really tough. There were challenges around my accent. Staff were saying they couldn't understand me. There were challenges around you walk into a room, you're talking to people and they ignore you. You're walking down the corridor, you say hello and nobody answers you back. And then if you're presenting to a group of senior managers, you've said something, they didn't hear you. But as soon as a white person says the same thing you've said, you know, those microaggressions, oh, everybody hears. Mm-hmm. So it was really an eye-opener for me. And I think that was the first time that I've actually experienced that the color of my skin makes people treat me differently. But it was, as I said, the first 2 years were really tough. And so what I used to do, because I had all my support network in London, on a Friday evening, I used to jump on the train and come to London, get my support, shore up myself for the weekend, dash back to Newcastle on Sunday evening, back to work for the week. And so it was years I went to London to get my hair done. I went to London to see my friends. I was singing in a choir. So I kept those relationships because I needed that at the time. It's not, so I don't need it as much now because I've got a network of friends that I've developed over the years. But when the time really gets tough, I've got a favorite quote and it says, life's like a camera. Focus on what's important, capture the good times. And if things don't work out, just give it another shot. So that's how I cope.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I don't know what to say to that. That's brilliant. And I love that quote. I think it's so important that we do celebrate the goodness that is around us.
Yeah.
I know probably Kosua and Sikli, you're hearing all the negatives that is in the majority that we can't deny it is there. But within that, we have times of loveliness and times of brightness. And I think it's important we celebrate those as well, because the stuff that's going on around us, and every time they say, you know, it's the way of the world, every incident is a rediscovery of racism. It hasn't really gone away.
No.
It's not new.
No.
And I just pop in there a bit there, Mish. Although my experience in the first couple of years were challenging, the last few years have been great, because what I did, I sort of threw myself into the staff network, so that because my experience was so bad, I didn't want anybody else from a BAME background coming in to experience what I did, although bits of it still remain, but I tried to support them as best as I can in terms of making sure that, you know, we smooth the path for those coming behind us. And it's not all bad. I've got the best team in the world now. I'm the only Black one in there, but it's the greatest OT team ever. So things do change.
But I think, that's true. And I think it's something about, I don't know about you young ones, Kalima, Kosua, Sikla, when you get to like a Death and Me, something about age and experience that makes you, and you shouldn't have to be, but makes you bolder and braver. And I do hate those words when it comes to just wanting the same as everybody else. Why do I have to be bold and brave to get that? But it's something that does come with age, that you do feel that you can go into those spaces that originally used to feel uncomfortable, and now you think, actually, it's just a space that I should be in, like everybody else, and I'm going in there, you know. But I don't know about you guys, since I have become so much more vocal and less invisible, I have found some of my friends are finding it uncomfortable and don't want to talk to me about it. Friends that I've known forever, suddenly their ignorance and fragility has come to the surface that I never really noticed. And I never really noticed because I never really made vocal my feelings and the things that have happened to me. I've always kept it quiet. But now I've talked about it, it's suddenly too awkward for them. So I don't know if you felt that ever at all, any of you, that suddenly your friendship groups are changing because you don't want to be quiet anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily within the profession, but I think especially within the last few months, and a lot of people have been speaking up a lot more. You've noticed that I've been called aggressive in the last few months. I've been told to just, oh, you know, can we just talk about something else? You know, it's not a big issue. It is a big issue, and you know, people want you to shut up and be quiet, but actually, these conversations need to be had, and you know, people need to realise, open your eyes, see what's going on, see what you've been blind to for a long time, and see what other people have actually been experiencing for their whole lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the same. I don't think it's personally like my friendship groups, but I think more people that, you know, that I've grown up with and that I thought I knew, and kind of seeing their opinions and views, and you start thinking, oh, I didn't know that you felt this way.
Quite scary.
Yeah, it is quite scary. It is quite scary, particularly when you think, okay, you know, there's some kind of understanding there, and there's definitely some uncomfortableness. I mean, even in you know, work environments, people don't want to talk about it. If you try to bring it up, it's silent, as if you can hear a pin drop. But like we've said, people need to be made uncomfortable, and we need to make them so uncomfortable that they eventually get comfortable to talk about it. So I think, yeah, it's definitely.
That's a great point, Sikla. Get so uncomfortable that you're going to get comfortable to talk about it. Yeah. I think that's a great point. I don't know. Kalima, have you got anything to say?
Yeah, I think with me, I think at work, there isn't any discussion. There's a few emails that come around from maybe the director or CEO, you know, that talks about like, you know, BLM movements and things like that. But amongst the people, there isn't any discussion. And I think people are very uncomfortable. Personally, my personal life, no, I haven't really had any issues. But my friendship circles, I was able to talk about these things anyway. So yeah, my very small friendship circles, I'm kind of okay, but wider, I don't really think I've had much discussions as such. With people I don't know.
That's interesting. I was just saying before we started the recording that at my workplace we've started an initiative called AHP students. It's the Race and Cultural Equity Group, which is based on the one from our BAMEOTUK member Juin, that she does it at her university. So we based it on that. She advised us about it, and we've just started that. And my boss is very openly supportive and wants to engage, and you know, has declared that very, very openly that she has been complicit in it, because really she didn't really know what to do, and now she feels like she can talk openly to me and the other person that's working with me. She feels free now to talk about it and to be awkward and to you know, say, this is what I understand, this is my ignorance, I'm not too sure, and actually not feel scared about saying that. Because you can engage with that, can't you? When it's said and it's spoken about, then you can relate to it. It's the bit when it's quiet, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
I think it is important for my trust has been pretty good. They've developed different networks. So there's a BAME network, there's an LGBTQ network. So and that's well, obviously during COVID, and I think it's around June time, and they've been really proactive in trying to get people to talk and getting allies. So I have to say that my trust has been pretty good in trying to develop that and getting people to have those awkward conversations.
Yeah, and I think that's even the same with mine as well. We've started a group, well, that I'm kind of leading, like a working group, have those awkward conversations to see, okay, how can we, I know we're quite diverse in terms of, well, we're more diverse than what I've seen in previous OT teams, but it could be better, of course. You can always do better. So it's about increasing that and having those conversations and taking it to kind of some of our other members of our OT team who may be a little bit uncomfortable with it, or who may not know or realize, you know, of this bias that they might have. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely a work in progress. So I think there's some really interesting themes coming out of that there are activities going on everywhere right now, isn't it? It's like a perfect storm for change, and we need to capitalize on it, isn't there? There's so much going on in legislation, in education, around COVID-19, and that raising these race and health inequalities within society. There is so much opening up that if we don't grab it and start molding and manipulating some kind of good out of it, it will be a lost opportunity, I think, seriously. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to do and still a long journey here. But yes, thank you for sharing that. It was so interesting, and also to feel like I'm not going crazy and I'm not alone. That this is not a sole experience, but there's good stuff, definitely. Don't forget the good stuff. So I've got my next question, if you're all ready. What do you like? This is a nice question. What do you like about the profession, and what makes you proud to be an occupational therapist? Death, if I go to you first.
Hey, so I like the fact that OTs are dual trained in both mental health and physical health. And so I like the fact that we enable people to live the lives that they want to live. We empower them. I like the fact that we can support the entire person. So I am proud to be an OT because I know I make a difference to people's lives. It is a career that enables me to live my values, in that I can live my values in my intervention with patients and in my interaction with my staff. Because this career as an OT enables me to lead with compassion, and that's what I'm all about.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Kalima's looking with dread now. How do I follow that?
So I like about the profession, again, being duly trained and just able to just look at someone with a holistic approach. So you look at obviously mental health, physical health, and all the, you know, the environment as well, and just enabling the person to, you know, be functional, if you know, or to provide support that they need to kind of enable them to live a fulfilling life. So that's what I quite like about the profession and the job, and that's why I like it as well. I do think that I have a different view, being obviously BAME in the UK or whatever. I do have a different view, especially when I have you know, patients from, you know, Black and Asian or ethnic minority patients. I'm able to, I think I bring a different perspective, and I do find that they value that, and I've had lots of feedback about that as well. So yeah, I just feel that I just enjoy making a difference, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Kalima. Yes, that joy of making a difference, that's so important for the person, but also the therapist, that you've made that change. Kosovo, over to you.
So I agree, like both of you have said about being dual trained. I think that's so important. When I went from my role in acute mental health to physical integrated care team, I had so many people like, oh my gosh, how are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And I was like, well, why wouldn't I do it? You know, we're one person, mental and physical health, it goes hand in hand. And I think people forget that. So I just feel that we're giving people the tools to be independent. I feel like, you know, we see people in some of their really lowest and darkest moments, but we're still able to kind of support them, pick them up, but enable themselves to pick them up, you know, give them those tools to make life better for, you know, for whatever reason it might be. And I just think our role within the MDT is so important. The multidisciplinary team, I think sometimes people look over at OTs, I found this in mental health especially, oh, you know, the basket weavers. No, that's not just what we do, you know, we bring a lot to the table.
It's
and then
powerful too.
There you go, exactly. And when you can really evidence the difference that you've made and show those outcomes, it's, you know, people really respect the profession. So I love being an OT. I think it's great.
Thank you. Sika.
I like that we get to look at the little tiny things and every little detail. I feel like when I look at all the professions, the doctors, they're focusing on medicine, and again, it's the holistic way approach, I guess, when I say looking at the little things and every little detail. Nurses, they're focusing on particular things, but then there's physios focusing on something else, and then we're looking everywhere. We're everywhere, we're nosy, and I love it. I love that we, you know, at work, if I don't know, if I need to assess someone's road skills, we can go outside, whereas the nurses might just have to stay inside, and the doctors just need to stay inside to see someone. I can go to the shops with somebody. We can go shopping. We can have a jolly good time. We can, you know, do so many things, and I just love that this profession gives you that chance to do so much and to really see somebody in few view. So I think that's what I love about it. So I'm not always doing the same thing, which can get a little boring. I like to explore. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. That whole understanding of the human being and the social being and the complex being. That's why, you know, it's all multifactorial, multiple components that make us up. And that's what keeps us excited about the profession, because we can do so many things. I mean, if we look at, you know, Kalima, yours is social care, and people might think, oh, well, what can you do? Just give equipment and stuff. But you're dealing with a different person every time with different needs, you know, and that's what's exciting about that. You know, you don't know what you're going to see and how it's going to spark your creativity to think about, how do I now help this person do what they need to do, or, you know, live out their last days in a dignified way. And that's what makes it precious to be so involved with someone in such a way. It's almost intimate, but also it's about the macro stuff that come out of it, and that's the complexity of what we do. It's so exciting, become an occupational therapist. So now we're coming to the last question. What would you say to encourage people from Black and other ethnicities' heritage to join the profession? Kalima.
Sorry, repeat the question. Sorry, my internet was flicking.
No, that's all right. What would you say to encourage people from Black, Asian and other ethnicities to join the profession?
Okay, I would say I would encourage them to become an OT, and just you can bring a different approach. Obviously, we do need more research. We do need more BAME people within research as well, to look at, you know, the different assessment tools and things that we use to make sure that they're more inclusive. So I would kind of encourage them to become an OT and just try to, you know, just drive the workforce really. But yeah, it's hard work. It can be hard work, but yeah, if you're all for it.
Look, you're smiling, so it must be enjoyable as you're talking about it. You're beaming. So it's a good place, but like any other job, there are some challenges there as well, definitely. Oh, Death, what about yourself?
Sorry, I muted myself earlier. So I would say to my BAME colleagues, this profession needs you. As occupational therapists, you know, we need to be able to engage our patients in meaningful occupations. In order to do this, we need to understand the cultural context in which people live. It's becoming more apparent now during this pandemic that BAME people have been more impacted by it. And so there's a long rehabilitation road ahead for folks who've had long COVID, et cetera. As a Black OT in this space, you can make a difference because you'll be able to tailor your interventions to support this. So you'll be able to understand the pain and the trauma and the anger that impacts on one's occupational performance. And in understanding this, it enables you to provide interventions that will address these issues and their impact. There are very few Black OTs within the profession, and we need to increase this number significantly going forward. There are those of us who've gone before who are trying to prepare the way for you. And we hope that as we're going on before, we become aspirational role models so that you too can join this wonderful profession that we have as OTs and make a difference in this space.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's brilliant. Oh my God, who's going to follow? Kosua.
That was a perfect answer. Can I give that answer?
We just replay it.
I just think, like Adette said, we're a minority. I mean, it says it in the name, doesn't it? But especially within occupational therapy, it is a predominantly white female profession. And I just feel we need to break through those, you know, we need to push out the boundaries, we need to break down those barriers, we need to be in those spaces. Yeah. We need to get more BAME students in, get them into conferences, go out to the schools, really show off the profession. And I just feel sometimes patients like to see someone who's like them. And that might be in whatever way, skin colour, gender, background, anything. But sometimes, you know, that can be the first step to actually starting to break down those barriers and getting to know your patients. And if they've not got that option or that opportunity, you know, where does that leave us? And I just think, it's a great profession. I just feel that there's so many opportunities and it's being missed at the minute. And I think we really need to make our voice heard. So come and join us.
Thank you. See, Claire.
Yeah, I think Kosua just stole everything out of my head there. I was preparing my little speech in my head, but no, exactly what Kosua said. It's about kind of breaking down those back barriers. I'll say don't be discouraged, because you know once you start, you might go into areas like we discussed where you are the only BAME person there or the minority, but that is where it starts. That is where it starts. You start breaking down those barriers by putting yourself in those positions, and then we'll slowly build up. So no, I would really encourage people from BAME backgrounds to come and join, because this is the time to make a change. And I think it's quite exciting, especially with stuff like this. It starts with us who are here right now, who are BAME OTs here right now, and thinking about how can we bring people in, how can we increase the amount of BAME students and OTs who are coming. So I think, yeah, it also starts with us and kind of doing these things, opening up different platforms to let them know what's out there, and to kind of see their options. So I think that's what I would say.
Thank you. Gosh, such powerful women with powerful voices. Thank you so much. That's really good. And I can see that when people see this little video, that they'll see the passion and the kind of joy when you're talking about the profession that's oozing out of you as you discuss it. So thank you so much for your time tonight, and, you know, out of your busy lives, and taking time to share your experiences and your voices. And yes, first episode of BAME UK. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for organizing it. Thank you. Bye.